Hello friends, welcome back. First of all, tell me where in the world you're watching my video from. I knew something was wrong the moment she smiled. Not the smile she had when she was 8 years old, missing a tooth, chocolate smeared on her cheek. This one was polished, practiced, the kind of smile people wear when they've already decided who matters. It was Father's Day. We were seated at the long table in Richard's dining room. Glass, steel, everything reflective. Nothing warm. Nothing worn. I sat at the far end, hands folded, posture straight, like a guest who had arrived too early and stayed too long. Madison stood up and cleared her throat. "Happy Father's Day," she said. She walked toward me first and placed something in my hand. Light, thin. I didn't even need to look to know what it was. A lottery ticket. $5. She leaned in, laughing softly. "If you hit the jackpot," she whispered, "remember, half is mine." People chuckled. I smiled because that's what fathers do. We smile so our children don't have to sit with discomfort. Then she turned away from me. She crossed the room and stopped in front of Richard. And that's when the room changed. She handed him a velvet box. Heavy, deliberate, the kind of box that announces itself before it's even opened. Richard lifted the lid slowly, letting the light catch the metal inside. A Rolex, gold and steel, polished to perfection. Applause broke out. Someone whistled. Madison beamed like she'd just crowned a king. I stared at the watch. Not because I wanted one. I've never worn jewelry in my life. I stared because I understood the message instantly. Mine fit in my jacket pocket. His came in a box meant to be remembered. What hurt wasn't the difference in price. It was the difference in meaning. I had raised her. I had stayed when her mother left. I had crawled through attics and ceilings, worked overtime weekends, rewired churches and diners so she wouldn't graduate with debt. And yet, in that moment, I wasn't her father. I was the punchline before the real gift. I didn't speak. I didn't ask questions. I clapped with everyone else, because when you've spent a lifetime being invisible, you learn not to interrupt the show. Later that night, when the house was quiet and the laughter had faded, I sat alone at my kitchen table, the one with the chipped corner and the chair that creaks if you lean too far back. Morning light hadn't come yet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of a clock older than my marriage. I always review my bank statements the same way. Pencil, yellow notepad, 40 years of habit. You don't grow up stretching dollars without learning to account for everyone. That's when I saw it. $15,428.67. Timepiece reserve. My stomach dropped so fast I had to grip the edge of the table. At first, I thought it was fraud. A mistake. Some overseas charge I could dispute. But the date stopped me cold. Father's Day. I sat there longer than I want to admit, staring at that number like it might blink first. Then the memory surfaced. Madison still had access to my account. I'd added her years ago. Just in case, she said. After Eleanor left. After emergencies became something you prepared for instead of feared. I trusted her. I picked up the phone. She answered on the second ring. Music in the background. Laughter. Life happening somewhere I wasn't. "Hey, Dad." "Madison," I said carefully, like my voice was made of glass. "Did you use my account to buy Richard that watch?" Silence. Not surprise. Just a pause long enough to decide how honest she wanted to be. "Yeah," she said finally. "I figured you wouldn't mind. It's not like you were using that money for anything urgent." Urgent. I swallowed. That money was my emergency fund. Roof repairs. Medical bills. The quiet safety net of a man who never expected anyone to catch him if he fell. "You didn't ask me," I said. "Because you would have said no," she snapped. "This wasn't selfish, Dad. It was symbolic. Richard has done so much for us. He helped with the house, Jake's tuition, the lake place. You wouldn't even let me have a real wedding because of budget. He deserved something meaningful." Something meaningful. I felt something tear inside my chest, slow and clean, like fabric giving way. And what was I supposed to deserve? I asked. She sighed. The same sigh Eleanor used to use when she thought I was behind the times. "Dad, Richard is what a father should be." There it was. Not just theft. Replacement. I hung up before my voice could betray me. I didn't want her to hear the sound of man, realizing he'd been edited out of his own life. That night, I sat in the living room where Madison once built blanket forts. The TV stayed off. The lights stayed low. I stared at the window and wondered how a man could give everything he had and still be worth $5 and a joke. The silence wasn't new, but this time had weight. It brought Eleanor back to me. She used to say she wanted more. Bigger houses. Cleaner lives. Fewer calluses. She didn't leave in anger. She left in disappointment. And that cuts deeper. Madison was 6. Eleanor packed her car, quietly, and drove away. No shouting. No drama. Just absence. I stayed. I stayed through scraped knees, science projects, fevers at 2 in the morning. I stayed when the power went out, and when the world felt too big for a little girl. I stayed because that's what fathers do. But somewhere along the way, staying stopped being impressive. College introduced Madison to a different world. One with glass walls and imported art. And Richard, wealthy, confident, untouched by sacrifice. He didn't smell like oil. His hands were soft. His answers came with numbers and influence. I watched my daughter drift. Fewer calls. Then fewer visits. Then the word dad disappeared altogether. And now, she had taken my money and called it symbolism. The next morning, I couldn't sleep. The bank statement sat open like an accusation. Outside, neighbors mowed lawns, walked dogs, lived normal lives. My eyes fell on the lottery ticket. The one she'd handed me like a joke. I hadn't scratched it yet. It felt stupid to even try. But something in me, maybe bitterness, maybe fate, picked up a coin. Nothing. 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 Then the last row. 3 gold bars. I checked the legend. Checked it again. My hands started to shake. Jackpot. When the website confirmed it, my breath left my body like it had been punched out of me. $95 million. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just sat there, holding the ticket she thought was worthless, and realized the world had just shifted under my feet. Not because of money, because for the first time in my life, I had something everyone wanted, and I wasn't sure who deserved it. I slipped the ticket into a plastic bag and hid it inside an old electrical repair manual, a book no one had touched in years. For once, I didn't give everything away. I sat on the porch as the sun went down, the house humming behind me like a secret. My daughter had given me $5 and taken $15,000, and fate had handed me a question I could no longer avoid. When the people you love erase you, do you keep sacrificing, or do you finally let them see what they've done? For 3 days, I told no one. Not a neighbor, not the church, not even the man at the corner store who knew my coffee order by heart. The ticket stayed hidden between the brittle pages of that repair manual, pressed flat like a secret that might vanish if I looked at it too long. Every morning, I opened the book just to make sure it was still there. Every night, I closed it like a coffin lid. $95 million doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives with questions. I spent those days walking through my house slowly, like a stranger taking inventory. The warped floorboard near the sink. The leaky gutter I kept postponing. The front steps that dipped just enough to remind you they were tired. I didn't see a mansion. I didn't see luxury. I saw repairs. I saw time bought back from worry. I saw the kind of safety I'd never had the nerve to imagine. But every thought ended the same way. Madison. Should I tell her? The question sat heavy in my chest. Because despite everything, the watch, the money, the words, she was still my daughter. I remembered her small hand in mine, the way she used to squeeze twice when she was scared. I remembered promising her once, during a thunderstorm, that no matter what happened, I'd always be there. But I also remembered her laugh at the table. If you win big, half is mine. She'd said it like a joke. But jokes reveal expectations. I made coffee and stared out the window until it went cold. I wasn't afraid she'd ask for money. I was afraid she'd demand it. Not as love, but as entitlement. That the moment I spoke, I'd stop being a father and become a resource. So I didn't speak. I followed the rules. Claimed the ticket quietly. Hired a lawyer I'd never met before. Chose anonymity like a shield. Signed papers with a hand that didn't feel like my own. The money landed without ceremony. No choir. No angels. Just numbers on a screen that looked unreal, like a typo the universe hadn't corrected yet. I told myself that silence would keep things clean. That if Madison never knew, nothing would change. I was wrong. It started with my phone. Calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Messages that hung up before leaving voicemails. Then a knock on the door. My neighbor Janice, eyes wide, phone already in her hand. "Harold," she said, breathless. "Is it true?" I didn't even ask what she meant. I just shook my head slowly. She turned the screen toward me, and there she was. Madison. Perfect lighting. Soft makeup. eyes already damp. She looked into the camera the way she used to look at me when she wanted something and didn't want to ask directly. "Hi, everyone," she said, voice trembling just enough. I never thought I'd have to do this, but I can't stay silent anymore. My stomach turned to ice. She talked about betrayal, about emotional abuse, about a lottery ticket that was meant to be shared. Our thing, she called it. She said I stole it, that I cashed it in secret, that I cut her out after everything she'd done for me. For me. She spoke about her childhood, like it was a burden she'd survived, not a life I'd built around her. She talked about control, about guilt, about a father who made her feel small. I stood in my doorway, watching strangers pour their sympathy into her comment section like offerings. The video spread faster than truth ever does. 48,000 shares in 2 days. People call me greedy, manipulative, a textbook example of toxic fatherhood. They didn't know me. They didn't ask. They didn't want to. Richard followed soon after, not with a video, but with polish. A LinkedIn article, carefully worded. No names, just implications sharp enough to cut. Inheritance and integrity, he titled it. Family should come before fortune. I had never spoken publicly, but somehow I was already guilty. The world turned cold fast. Neighbors avoided eye contact. The church sent a message about community harmony. Reporters left cards at my door like threats wrapped in professionalism. One night, a soda can hit my mailbox. A boy on a bike laughed and shouted something about a Rolex. I didn't even own a watch. I stopped leaving the house unless I had to. Bought groceries late at night. Let mail pile up unopened. Silence had always been my refuge, but now it felt like an accusation. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would pass. Instead, silence became proof of guilt. 2 weeks in, an envelope appeared on my porch. No stamp, no return address, just my name. Inside was a business card. Linda Slater, ESQ, Elder Law Specialist, retired. And beneath it, a note in neat handwriting. Sometimes silence isn't safe. I know what they're doing. You're not alone. Slater. Richard's last name. We met at a roadside diner outside town. Neutral ground, she called it. She looked nothing like the woman I imagined. Calm. Precise. Eyes that had seen too much to waste words. I was married to Richard for 12 years, she said, stirring her coffee once. I watch him ruin people. Always indirectly. Always with charm. She slid a folder across the table. Court transcripts. Photos. Old news articles. Seniors convinced to sign things they didn't understand. Families fractured while Richard walked away untouched. He lets others carry the blame, she said. He plays savior while someone else becomes the villain. She looked at me steadily. He's doing it again. Through your daughter. My hands clenched under the table. She doesn't see it, I said. She will, Linda replied. But only if the truth exists somewhere louder than lies. She handed me a printout, the bank authorization, Madison's name, her access, the Rolex charge. That's theft, she said plainly, no matter how symbolic she calls it. Then she handed me something else. A letter. 3 paragraphs. Simple. Honest. Mine. That night, I posted it. No hashtags. No dramatics. Just the truth and the proof. I didn't defend myself. I didn't attack her. I just spoke. By morning, the noise shifted. Some messages still burned, but others apologized. Shared stories. Thanked me for saying what they couldn't. The lie cracked. Local news called it a father side of the story. Richard stayed silent. Madison disappeared. And in that quiet, that rare, earned quiet, I understood something that took me a lifetime to learn. Silence is only dignity when it's chosen. And for the first time, I had chosen to speak. The ballroom was colder than it looked. Crystal chandeliers scattered light like broken ice, and every surface reflected someone else's success. White tablecloths, polished shoes, applause practiced enough to sound sincere. I stood near the back, my blazer stiff against my shoulders, wondering how many people in that room had ever fixed a furnace at midnight so a school wouldn't close in winter. When they called my name, it didn't feel real. Please welcome the winner of the $95 million Power Gold jackpot, Mr. Harold Bennett. Applause rose in waves, clean and detached. Cameras lifted. Smiles turned toward me like sunflowers chasing light. I walked forward slowly, the ceremonial check heavier than it should have been, my ears ringing with static. I told myself to breathe. I told myself this was just a moment. Then I saw her. Madison cut through the crowd in a red dress sharp enough to wound. She wasn't walking. She was charging. Her heels struck the marble floor like punctuation marks, her jaw tight, eyes fixed on me with a fury I'd never seen directed outward before. "Dad," she shouted. The room froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. A violinist lowered his bow. Phones came up instinctively, the modern reflex when something breaks. "We need to talk. Right now." She climbed the stage steps halfway, pointing at me like I'd committed a crime in public. "You told me we'd split it. That ticket was ours. Our joke. You stole it." Gasps rippled outward. The word stole hung in the air, sharp and irreversible. Security shifted closer. Someone whispered my name like a question. Madison's voice cracked. Not softly, but violently. "He's twisting everything. He's been doing this my whole life. Controlling me. Guilt-tripping me. Now he wins, and suddenly I'm the villain." I looked at her and saw not a child, not even my daughter, but a person drowning who had decided I was the weight pulling her down. Richard appeared near the aisle, calm as ever, one hand raised slightly, the universal gesture of restraint. He didn't look at me. He didn't have to. He was watching the room. I stepped toward the podium. My legs felt old, but my voice didn't. I gripped the edge of the lectern like it might float away and leaned into the microphone. "Sometimes," I said, and the room hushed, "you give someone trash, expecting it to rot." A murmur passed through the crowd. "My daughter gave me a $5 scratch-off ticket on Father's Day," I continued. "It wasn't meant as a gift. It was a placeholder, a joke, a reminder that in her world, I was worth $5. Madison shook her head violently. "That same night," I said, "she gave her stepfather a Rolex. Every I turned to her. A watch bought with my money." The silence cracked. "She didn't ask," I said. "She didn't warn me. She drained my account quietly, efficiently, the way you do when you think someone won't notice." A reporter raised a hand, silently asking permission to record. I nodded. "So yes," I said, "I scratched that ticket, and I won." My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. I didn't just win money. I won clarity. Madison lunged forward. "You're lying. You're rewriting history like you always do." I turned to face her fully. "Abuse," I said calmly, "isn't always shouting. Sometimes it's erasing someone until the world forgets what they gave." Richard stepped forward. Security stepped in front of him. That's when the room really noticed. "This money," I said, lifting the check slightly, "was never a reward. It was a mirror. It showed me who applauded when I had nothing, and who demanded pieces of me when I finally had something." My eyes scanned the room, then returned to Madison. "I raised you. I stayed. I sacrificed. And I would have given you anything you asked for, if you had asked." Her mouth opened. No sound came out. "But dignity," I finished, "is not something I'm willing to give away anymore." For a moment, there was nothing. Then one person clapped. Then another. Then the sound rose, uneven at first, then undeniable, until the entire room was standing, applause rolling like thunder. Not for the money, for the truth. Madison screamed over it, her voice breaking apart. "You're all blind. You don't know what he's really like." Security moved in firmly now. She fought them, heels scraping, eyes wild. "You owe me," she shouted as they escorted her away. "You owe me." Richard stayed where he was jaw tight. A reporter shouted toward him, "Mr. Slater, is it true you were involved in a similar elder manipulation case 10 years ago?" He didn't answer. Cameras turned. I stepped back from the podium, suddenly exhausted. Later, in the lobby, people touched my arm gently. Apologized. Thanked me. One woman whispered, "My daughter did the same thing." "I'm so sorry." Outside, night had fallen, but it felt like morning. I sat in my car for a long time before turning the key, the applause still echoing in my chest. For the first time, the room had turned. But as I drove away, one question stayed with me, heavier than the check, louder than the clapping. When the truth finally stands up for you, what kind of life do you build next? 3 months later, the noise was gone. No reporters at the curb. No neighbors pretending not to look. No strangers dissecting my life through comment sections and headlines. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel like abandonment, but like rest. I packed my house myself. Didn't hire anyone. I needed to touch every object, decide what stayed and what didn't. Old tools went into labeled boxes, photos into a single album, clothes into one suitcase. Everything else, the excess, the echoes, I let go. I moved back to Hendersonville, the town where I was born, where people still waved without knowing your net worth. The Blue Ridge Mountains rose in the distance like they always had, steady and uninterested in drama. I didn't come to disappear. I came to rebuild. On the edge of town stood an abandoned garage I remembered from childhood. Rusted roof, cracked concrete, but the bones were strong. I bought it the same day I saw it. Money makes things easy. Work makes things honest. I spent weeks there alone, cleaning, painting, fixing. The smell of oil and dust felt like home. When I finally hung the sign above the door, it read, Bennett's Hands, Tools, Trust, Second Chances. It wasn't just a shop. I used part of the money to start a small foundation, quiet, practical help, emergency repairs, childcare grants, trade school scholarships, rent support when life tilted without warning. People called it generosity. They were wrong. It was recognition. I was building the place I once needed and never had. On Saturdays, the shop closed early. Volunteers gathered out back. Kids ran between stacks of donated bikes and tires. I made grilled cheese and soup, nothing fancy. The kind of meal that fills you without trying to impress. Sometimes people asked about the money. What did you do with the rest of it? I smiled and nodded toward the mountains. I bought my silence back. And for the first time in my life, I kept it. Eleanor came once. She stood in the doorway holding white lilies, looking smaller than I remembered. Her apology was careful, earnest, late. I saw everything, she said. I was wrong. I thank her. That was enough. She left, heels clicking softly, and I never saw her again. Madison never reached out. No call, no letter, no apology. For a while that hurt. Then it didn't. Some wounds don't close. They scar. And eventually, you stop bleeding. I don't hate her. I don't wish her pain. But I no longer carry her absence like a punishment. Healing isn't always reunion. Sometimes it's peace. People still recognize me now and then. They ask about the jackpot, about the gala, about the speech. They miss the point. This was never a lottery story. Never a scandal. Never revenge. It was a family story. A father who stayed. A daughter who lost her way. A world that rewards noise and overlooks quiet sacrifice. Money didn't fix anything. Grace did. The grace to forgive without receiving an apology. The grace to stop waiting for validation. The grace to start over, even alone. And faith. In the quiet moments, when the shop is empty and the mountains breathe in the distance, I feel it clearly. I was never invisible. I was just unseen by the wrong people. If you've ever been overlooked by your own blood, if you've ever given everything and been treated like nothing, know this. Your story still matters. Your dignity still counts. And silence, when chosen, can be freedom. I learned that late, but I learned it whole.